looking at the Ghanaian diaspora in South Africa. Ghanaian diaspora in South Africa.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm into diaspora studies.
Can we start? So I've read the interview that you gave to the Caravan magazine about So I read the interview that you gave to the Kambon magazine. So I've got like a sense of where you're coming from. But if you could take us back to 2016 when the statue was set up and how it all started for the university here. And was it the first time in Ghana that such a protest has taken place, or there have been?
There have been protests around different things. This is the first one that I know of around a statue of Gandhi for certain, but I'm not sure about any other statues. There was a movement that didn't get started because of this statue that came, but it was around Gugisberg. Gugisberg. This what is this guy? Governor. Gugisberg. This governor of at that time Gold Coast, and his statue was at Korle-Boek, and they wanted to mount a protest of this statue. But they never got that campaign started because this statue of Gandhi came and they decided, okay, let's just, deal with this one first and then we'll deal with all these other colonial figures after. But to take it back to 2016, that we got an announcement, several emails that came that said that the president of India was going to be coming here to give a speech, no mention of any statues whatsoever. A couple of emails were sent, they posted it to the website. So everyone's like, okay, well, cool, no problem. But then the morning that he was supposed to give the lecture, they unveiled the statue. Again, they didn't consult with anyone. And anytime, buildings are named or any of these things go on, there's a process that, it goes through. But this one didn't go through a process. It just, surreptitiously arrived on campus and, the way I found out wasn't at the unveiling because there were very few people there, and also the students had just finished exams, so there were very few students on campus. I just happened to be driving by, and as I was driving by, I saw, oh, this looks new, so I looked to my left. I said, oh, who is this? I said, Gandhi, of all people. And I said, these people must have no idea who Gandhi was. So I at that time we had access to a listserv where all staff and students, you could send an email to all of them. After this, they cut that off. Now you can no longer send emails to all colleagues on campus. Okay. It has to be moderated because of this whole Gandhi debacle. And me personally, I've been censored by some powers that be, but that's a different story. So anyway, I sent this email with 52 of Gandhi's most racist quotes.
So 52?
52 of Gandhi's most racist quotes.
Okay.
Anti-black racist, where he refers to black people as savages, half heathens, 1 degree removed from the animal, live almost like animals, kafirs, and so forth and so on. You have the kafir apologists who say, oh, kafir is a great word, at that time. Even though at the time you have in Gandhi's own writings where he is lamenting being called a coolie. He says his women are called coolie Marys. One even hears coolie lawyer, coolie doctor. So he knows that that term is offensive. And then later on in the same paragraph he says, and by the way, the kafirs, right? So he understands what's going on with the use of these terms, right? But even those who want to be the kafir apologists, it's like, okay, so you're telling me that savage must also be a good term at that point in time? Half heathen, 1 degree removed from an animal, maybe that's a term of endearment somewhere, maybe in Gujarati or something, I highly doubt it. But so anyway, I sent all of these out and it started a discussion.
How many people did you mark this mail to?
To all staff, which would be thousands.
Okay.
Now in the back and forth, not all 1,000 participated, but everyone was reading. I would say dozens of people were going back and forth participating. And you had a lot of people who were like, we never knew this,
This is Gandhi.
Yeah, right. This side of Gandhi, they saw a movie which was sponsored by the Indian government, and they were like, he must be a great guy. All these people say he's great, but again, these people haven't done primary research in the collected works because it wasn't until the late 90s that you even could do that type of primary research. So I sent that out. Some people, Prof. Gajapur, she said, yes, this is what we should be doing at the university. This is real research. Yeah, this is cutting edge. This is what we should be doing. Other people were like, he must have been good. Matter of fact, the vice chancellor, he said, I think he changed later on in life. So I said, he must not have read the collected works either. So I sent him an email with all of his later works fighting against the Dalits. So basically you see a continued stream of fighting for upper caste Hindus and then fighting against black people regardless of where he is, whether those happen to be Zulus, whether they happen to be the Dalits. So, from there you can look at what Congress and Gandhi have done to the untouchables by Dr. Ambedkar, and several other texts that really go in depth into what he was doing, where Dr. Ambedkar said that the people who are there at that Congress, they felt that Gandhi was the worst enemy of the untouchables, how he fought against their attempts to get the double vote, the special electorates, and coerced Ambedkar into signing this Pune Pact. So all of these things come up. So I said, obviously the Vice Chancellor has not read any of this. And you can really tell people who start off reading the autobiography, which is when he calls it experiments with truth, that's a euphemism for straight lies. Because in the autobiography he says, my heart was with the Zulus. I bore no grudge against the Zulus. But when you read what he was writing at 1905, 1906, he says he wants to get guns, military training, rifles to take his part in the share of the defense of the colony against these Kafirs. There's another rebellion of the Kafirs, and the Indians should go to the front lines just like they did the last year. So you have all these things. So if you start off with the autobiography and you even think for a moment that he's being genuine and sincere, then you go, okay, yes. But if you start off with the collected works, that puts into stark contrast what's going on with what he was actually writing at the time, and then what he decided to lie about later on.
How did you take interest in Gandhi?
Back in the early 90s, I was looking at a lecture by Dr. John Henrik Clark.
Doctor?
John Henrik Clark. Dr. John Henrik Clark. And in it, he was talking about Martin Luther King. And he said that if Martin Luther King knew who Gandhi was, he would have chosen a better hero like Akhenaten, who was also called the Prince of Peace and all of these things. He said because Gandhi was a fake, a fraud, and a liar. And I was like, this is very harsh words, because I had seen the Gandhi movie, but I hadn't heard anything, like that. So I was like, just the incisiveness and the straightforward bluntness of how he said it, a fake, a fraud, a liar, so forth and so on. So, I decided to start looking into that issue at that point in time. And then also through the works of Dr. Ranoko Rashidi, who has worked with the Dalit Panthers and other organizations like that. And at that point in time, he had a Yahoo group. This is the late 90s. And just about every single week, we were reading about the atrocities committed against Dalit women, Dalit men. This one asked for wages that was owed to him, and he was burned alive for that. This one, the shadow touched the shadow of an upper caste Hindu. She was burnt alive for that. This one was raped. This one was dismembered, and so forth and so on. So, given our history as black people in the U.S., we saw a lot of parallels and similarities, which also Dr. Ambedkar saw as well. So he always drew this link between Abraham Lincoln and Gandhi, that they're all playing this demographic game. None of them have the best interests of black people at heart. They're just trying to keep the Union together in the case of Lincoln, and the Hindu fold together in the case of Gandhi. So he's trying to make sure that the 45 million Dalits at that point in time don't get a chance to get out there, because Swaraj, we're talking about independence, this is really talking about majority rules. So you have to make sure that you have this Hindu majority. And Ambedkar referred to this Hindu caste system as a torture chamber, or like a chamber of horrors. He referred to it like a multi-story building, but without ladders and without doors. It means that wherever you're born into, this is where you have to stay in for perpetuity. And he was for the annihilation of caste, whereas Gandhi said all the way to his death that if you annihilate caste, then you annihilate Hinduism, that he held onto the Varnashrama Dharma, that this has to stay in place. He's for basic caste, and then there are all these uncountable subcastes within that. So you really see a vast difference in terms of even the Kafir apologists, so who say Kafir must have been a great term for Gandhi, that what we find is that doesn't hold weight because you have people like Ambedkar who magically found a way not to refer to us as kafirs.
But there are also historians who've said that later on in his career, like he was initially
Yeah.
ignorant about
Mhm.
the
You know
way
that-
South Africans live, and later on there were these laws where Africans could not own. I think there was a law over 90% of a plot, and
Mhm.
he supported Africans against the British. So there have also been incidents recorded in history. So has that sort of not changed the perception about Gandhi in people living here?
You know, and I can't speak for everyone who's living here, from my point of view, once you understand how Gandhi was straight lying about his role in the segregation of the Durban Post and Telegraph offices, once you see how he was lying about his role in terms of the segregation of laboratories in the jails and in the jail cells as well, that you see that later on he doesn't say anything about what he was actually doing. He actually lies about it. So once you understand that Gandhi is actually lying, it helps to put into perspective the different things that he started to do later on to cover his tracks of the things that he did in
So you
his
don't
youth.
think it's a change of heart that?
No, definitely not. Because a lot of people point to the Brahmacharya vow that he took in the middle of 1906, and they say that's when he had this epiphany, that's when he started to change. But you find some of the worst things that he was saying and doing against black people was after 1906. So you find quotes all the way up to 1913, right before he left South Africa, where he's saying, some people think that we are going to ask the Kafirs, he uses that term, 1913, at over 40 years old. He's saying that some people think that we want the Kafirs to join the strike, but that's definitely not the case. So he's all the way up to the time he's about to leave, he's still not working with the black people. He's saying that we're not trying to work with these, and he doesn't say black people, he says these Kafirs. So then he leaves, and then he immediately starts fighting against the Dalits. So they had this Chowdar tank Satyagraha led by Dr. Ambedkar. So in this case, they thought that they were going to get the support of Gandhi because they're using the tool that he himself fashioned. So with this Satyagraha, Gandhi not only didn't support it, he condemned it in very strong terms, where he says that if you use this against your kith and kin, and you go against the deep-seated prejudices of people, then this becomes Duragraha. So instead of taking the side of the Dalits, he now is fighting against the Dalits because this is what he does. He fights for his caste and against the black people.
So how many people in the university sort of joined this protest to sort of remove the statue?
So-
how many numbers?
As we were 2 weeks in, we had about 100 signatures per day. So we got about 1,400 signatures before the Ministry of Foreign Affairs intervened and said, we'll take the statue away. And
When did they intervene?
they intervened verbally
Okay.
to say we'll take the statue away, and that's when things started to subside. And matter of fact, after that, people started congratulating us as though it was actually taken away just because they had
When did
said.
they intervene? This was 2016? Or?
This is 2016.
Okay.
So it was 2 weeks after we started the petition. This is sometime, I want to say September, October, thereabout. I can actually go and look at the exact dates.
Okay.
But I know it was exactly 2 weeks after we started the petition, because every single day, 100 signatures, over 1,400, 1,500 thereabout. And then they said, we'll take away the statue. And then people said, okay, fine. And then people started celebrating and hopping up and down, saying, you don't know this ministry. Because what they're doing is trying to just take away the momentum by saying, we'll acquiesce to your demands in order to defeat you.
So is there any other statue of anybody else in the entire university, or was this the first statue to be ever sort of erected?
So there are statues which are like generic statues, unmarked. It's like, this is an African student.
Mhm.
And it's, you just have to take that, okay, well, this is just any African student. And one of the things that this tells us is that all of our great leaders, all of our great heroes, none of them measure up to someone who said that we are 1 degree removed from an animal, right?
So
So
you've never had any leader or a
Any
known
kind of
person?
Gandhi kind leader here,
Just-
Ghana.
up at the registry, we have some busts, busts of former vice chancellors. And then around you have generic, like right outside of African studies, there's like images of someone hitting a bell
Okay.
and someone like holding an animal, and it's just like generic whatever, which tells us we must have never done anything. Maybe I'll be the first one to do something, then I can finally get a statue. So this is the subliminal message, and it goes into what happens when you have heroes that are selected for you, what does it do to you psychologically? So for example, a lot of people may not know that the oldest book in the history of the world was written by an African. Especially Africans here don't know that, right? This is Ptahhotep. So where is his statue? If I rank the oldest book in the history of the world versus Gandhi, I think this is more important as for an institution of higher education, right? If I say the world's first multi-genius, this is Imhotep, right? If I walk around and I do this, the students have no idea who this person is. The first multi-genius, that's someone who everyone in the entire world should know. Whether you're Chinese, whether you're Indian, Australian, whatever, everybody should know that name. But here in Africa, because he's African and that's not part of our curriculum, we don't even get a chance to know about him. So where is his statue? And I can go down the list of 100 African people, the students know 0 of them.
So how did this all pick up steam again? I mean, in 2016 when they said it's been 2017 and then 2018 and the end of 2018, I think November when it was removed.
Yes.
So how did it pick up steam again? And
So we had several letters that we wrote to council, to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, all throughout. So we are pressing forward with this because we realized when they said that they'll remove it, that they had no intention of removing it. They just wanted to take the steam out of this movement. So we were, pressing forward.
so is it an when you say we, is it an association or is it a group
There-
of informal group of students?
So it's a group of students and faculty, who are really pressing forward with the issue, who form the core of what we call Gandhi Must Fall. So some were, staff, faculty, and then people in civic organizations in the community as well who helped to publicize it online, offline, and things of that
So
nature.
it was not limited to students and professors
It-
of university, it also went
Yes,
outside.
yes. And matter of fact, we have so many people in the community. Matter of fact, a lot of Indians, especially the Dalits, especially Sikhs, especially CDs, who, when I did the Caravan magazine interview, my inbox was flooded with Dalits like, yes, finally someone knows what we
It
really
is
suffer.
support of Dalit.
Yeah. So really connecting the struggle. So we really wanted people to understand this isn't a Ghana versus India thing because so many Indians are like, I'm glad that someone finally is understanding the connections between the struggles. And myself and Nanaya were working on an article that shows parallels between the struggles of the Dalits and Adivasis and CDs in India. Also shows the struggles of black people in South Africa and then the struggles of black people in the US. It shows how they're all parallel and similar.
So how did we finally bring down the statue?
Very good. So the morning that the statue was removed, I got
Who removed it? The students removed it? or-
no. I wish the students
That's right.
removed.
Because there's a picture that I saw.
Yeah. It
was vandalized to
Courtesy
some
you.
extent.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a picture that you only provided. I think Caravan is where I saw it.
Yes.
Where there are a group of people who are pulling it down with ropes. So
Right. So those are military and then also university officials.
okay, they're not students.
They're not students. And matter of fact, they waited until students were out of session again, just like it came. They waited until students are out of session because we have like a good 40,000 students. That place would have been packed if they did that. So they waited until everyone's written their exams, everyone's gone home, and they used the images you see of them moving the ropes. There were students who happened to be around and they were walking by and they started trying to take images with their cameras. The military people took their phones, deleted the images, and then gave it back to them to
How
say,
did you get that picture?
this is a good question. I have my ways and my means. I have a colleague who is at a department that's close by who had a very long range lens. So he stood, way across the street where they didn't see him, and he was taking these long range shots. And later on, when I was there, you saw me like on the pedestal on the plinth, with the other students. And he came up and said, "Oh, I have the images from when they removed it. Are you interested?" I said, "Are you kidding?"
So when did you guys know that it has been removed? It was one of the afternoons or?
So this is what I was
next day?
saying. So on that morning, someone called me and said, "What do you think about the removal of the statue?" And I'm just waking up and saying, "What? Huh? What?" And that was actually me first finding out. So I started getting calls, all these people from the different news organizations here and then internationally. What do you think about it? I said, hold on, let me go and see it for myself.
Why do you think it was removed suddenly overnight? Or?
So I know about a week before that, the president of Ghana was here on campus and he gave a speech at the All African Peoples Conference. I don't know if it came from him. What we got was they said it was an internal university decision. So either the vice chancellor or someone high up decided to make that. I thought perhaps at the urging of the president who was just here or something, but again, we haven't gotten any confirmation. We weren't alerted. You would think that they would alert us that they're going to remove it, but it
And
was.
do we know where it is now? Or?
The news reports I've seen have said that it's at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration. I saw a story that I haven't corroborated on Economic Times where it said that they're going to remount the statue in a prominent location in India. I haven't seen any official word from the government to say that that's the case. But at this point in time, the statue was only allowed to come because of vast ignorance.
So it was commissioned by the Indian Embassy.
Right. And this is actually, I did some reading up that this was approved by the government of India that they're going to establish all these statues all around the world and also all throughout Africa, specifically Mahatma Gandhi convention centers. And when we look at this is part of, in my view, the proxy war with China. Mm-hmm. So if you look at, the border disputes, Bhutan, all of these things, you have India versus China. So China has a heavy footprint here in Africa. The road that you were taking that had so much traffic, that was done by the Chinese. They're doing all this infrastructure work. And India is doing something similar.
The presidential house.
So you see that the seat of government, Jubilee House, was built by India. They said they would give $200 million to build a new parliament building. So what they're saying is, your lawmakers, your president, executive, we bought them off, right? And they're going straight. So China's doing like a more diffused approach. India's like, all right, we don't have the money for all that. We're just going to buy the main people who we need to buy. And this is what we see again is we see all these Indian soap operas, Kumkum Bhaja, so forth and so on. So Gandhi is the face of soft power. And what I found so ironic is you have Narendra Modi, who uses Gandhi. Meanwhile, since he got into power 2014, India has been the #1 importer of arms, weapons in the entire world. This is more than the US, more than Britain, anyone who you think is a warmongering country. India is importing more arms than anyone in the entire world. So at the same time that they're giving a face of peace, right, they are warmongering, which I think is such a parallel because that's what Gandhi did. Just this idea, this propaganda of peace. Meanwhile, you can read his writings of World War I saying, I would teach people violence. If the empire wants to get violent with us, then, I would fight the empire. All of you should join and enlist. So here's a guy, 1918, he supposedly had his vow of ahimsa or whatever in 1906, but he's inciting violence. You have another one, and I can pull out the book, G.B. Singh, Behind the Mask of Divinity, and you can also find this in the collected works where he's having this dialogue with his son. He's reporting this dialogue with his son where he says, if you were there when I was being attacked, what would you have done? And he exhorts his son, you should use violence, all these types of things. Mm-hmm. So people have this face, and this is again the hypocrisy as a way of life or experiments with the truth as a euphemism for lying, saying peace but really being about violence and war.
Are you in touch with, so there have been similar protests in other parts of Africa. Are you in touch with these other groups?
Yes, we're in very close touch with our colleagues in Malawi, especially. They had the protests where they had an injunction to even prevent that statue from being erected, so we're in very close touch with them.
This was 2018?
Yes, 2018. This is Malawi. And then others in South Africa, others also in Oxford, Rhodes Must Fall. So we have a book chapter, Gandhi Must Fall, in the larger Rhodes Must Fall book there. We're in close touch with other colleagues in Africa and beyond. Recently, I gave an interview for a radio station in Trinidad and Tobago where they're trying to knock down the statue of Christopher Columbus, the noted rapist, murderer, genocidal maniac called Christopher Columbus. And, really we see our struggles as being connected. So it's throughout Africa, but then throughout the entire black world, we have, the unification of these struggles.
Could you put me in touch with the Malawi protesters?
Yeah, no problem. I can definitely put you in touch.
Good.
Okay. Then I have another question.
No problem.
Because I have another perception.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is that, suppose in present day India, what is happening is that I will explain.
No problem.
Everything, these multinational companies are coming.
Yes.
Once upon a day, the Indian Gandhi, that what the Indians have a perception, this Gandhi resisted in that time. But Gandhi resisted these British people. Gandhi South Swadeshi. Swadeshi means the public sector, people will have to get everything, let corporate out, that kind of ideology he has insisted. Nowadays, what is one of the biggest challenge in front of India, according to me? E-corporates are coming, multinationals are coming.
Yeah.
Suppose we don't have a water of our thing, Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, all are coming, all are plundering, all our villages and everything. I think that same is happening here also. For an example, when I am coming by a flight, lot of Malayalis and South Indians are there, all are having business. You know that in my village, there are a lot of these cashew nut companies. What they are doing that they are coming here, they are procuring cashew nut for throwaway prices. They are exporting it there, and they are just cracking it, then packing it. They are exporting it for crores of rupees. Another thing is that I was told that e-waste, huge e-waste is being dumped here from Western countries, as well as even in India is exporting e-waste countries. Do you think that these all are the basic issue? At this age, don't you think that these things are basic issue rather than we are just researching what Gandhi told versus what Gandhi told? This is my point of view.
Yeah, I think this is a very good question.
But just one second.
Oh, no problem. So I think this is a very good question, and I don't see the two issues as being mutually exclusive, because the reason why we have so little self-esteem for ourselves to the point where we'll allow e-waste to be dumped here, the reason why we have so little self-respect in terms of allowing anyone to step on us and use us as doormats is related to the idea that we don't know very much of ourselves. And a quote from Dr. Ranoko Rashidi is, what we do for ourselves depends on what we think of ourselves. What we think of ourselves depends on what we know of ourselves. And what we know of ourselves depends on what we have been told, that's to say, about ourselves. So just the simple fact that we have very little self-respect as African people, because we don't know very much about our history, so we don't think much of ourselves. So if this guy says that we're one degree removed from an animal, then we'll just go along with it and say, okay, yes. And now when someone says, all right, we're going to dump some e-waste in your country, if you think that you're worthless, why would you oppose them? You understand? If someone says that you live like animals, that you're savages, you're half heathens, a lot of colleagues here, they think the exact same thing. That yes, I have students who tell me, if not for white people, we would be living on trees right now. These are students here at the University of Ghana. So how would you expect this person to now stand up for themselves against a multinational corporation when every Sunday they're going to a church to pray to an imaginary white man? You understand? When the only hero that they can look up to is an image of Gandhi. They don't know of any of their contributions to the world. They don't know that the PC was made, and we can talk about modern things. Dr. Mark Dean, right, working for IBM, was a black man who has the majority of patents on the PC. Dr. Thomas Mensah, who pioneered fiber optics. So we can look at all of these different contributions made by black people, but the students here, and then the adults here, and the government people here, they know absolutely none of them. So now when you have a multinational corporation who's coming to rape, pillage, and plunder, then you just allow them to come on through because you have absolutely no backbone, you have no spine, because that would come from a knowledge of self. You understand? So again, I don't see those issues as mutually exclusive. They're actually very much related. The idea of how you would allow a statue of an enemy of black people to be planted here on your soil when you have absolutely no statues of your own people, of your own heroes, of some of the most important human beings ever to walk the face of the planet Earth. You have not only do you have no statues of them, you don't even know their names. Me as a researcher, I know their names, but if you don't happen to come into my class, then you will go through your entire career and graduate without knowing a single one, right? So to stand up to the multinationals, to stand up to the Indian government, to stand up to anyone, for me, I have knowledge of self. That's why if the Indian government is coming with a statue of this man Gandhi, I will stand up for that. But I have so many other colleagues who say, I don't care about any of those things as long as my paycheck comes. I actually had colleagues who said that. They care nothing. They said these issues of self-respect, I don't care about them. If I see my paycheck has come, that's all. Now, what created that type of mentality? You understand? You're not gonna. Someone like that isn't standing up for a multinational. He's not standing up against Coca-Cola. He's not standing up against Monsanto, and he's definitely not standing up against the Indian government or the Chinese government or the U.S. government or Britain or Francophonie. So our president of Ghana right now is saying, let's make French mandatory. Now, we don't have an African language mandatory. You understand? So how can you have someone like that? This is someone who has no knowledge of self. If he had knowledge of self, this is someone who's a Francophile. He loves the French. He thinks the French did everything, right? He knows Napoleon, but he doesn't know Dessalines, who's the general who defeated Napoleon. So how would I expect him to say no to Francophonie? Because he has absolutely no knowledge of self. He's allowing the U.S. military base to be built here. You understand? He doesn't understand that the United States broke every single treaty with the indigenous people on the soil of the United States. Over 500 treaties, they broke every single one. So now the U.S. is coming with an agreement. They say, oh yes, of course, they will honor their agreements. I say, you must not know anything about this criminal organization called the United Snakes. United Snakes, not United States. If you knew about any of that, you would make a different decision. So again, my role as a researcher is to, let some of that information be known so that we can start to have African people with a backbone who can stand up against all of these criminal Eurasians, whether they happen to be in India or China or US or wherever.
And if I'm to add to that, I feel like with the knowledge also being out there, the effect of the Gandhi statue falling shows like how potent information or knowledge can be, because you would have people who were signing the petition and then for all of their lives they had believed that Gandhi was somebody to look up to, but the petition also came with like all of the quotes that Gandhi had written, right? And then many people were like, wow, I didn't know about this, I didn't. So people are penning their signatures because for the first time the information was reaching them. And the second two that I wanted to point out was that the Gandhi issue also was really beautiful in that day, because it brought together like the nexus between art as an art movement and also the intellectual movement. So there was one artist, writer, who also made visual depictions of like the Prime Minister of Gandhi taking a piss on our Vice Chancellor, which he tried to exhibit in a room upstairs here in November of 2018, I think. No, yeah, but anyways, in a year or two back, but they told him to take it away or to take it off. He was also being censored, but this image had already gotten out into the media, and then people, I think that also conscientized the people to realize that this is literally taking a piss on us and we have to stand for ourselves. So that's also the price of knowledge in what knowledge can do.
Okay, so it's also, so this was also an attempt, as I understand, to redeem our identity and establish that the person who's been there sort of made derogatory remarks towards us, we need to stand up against him symbolically. But you also, in between right now while you were speaking, said black people.
Yes.
So don't you think that itself is derogatory to our own tribe when we say black people?
No.
Because it's globally considered that either use the term Africans or dark skinned. It's dark skinned.
No. And I'll tell you why, and this is why primary source research is so important. So it's not universal to think that black is derogatory, right? That you find that in Eurasian languages, but that's not the case. So even if you look at the Hindu caste system, you see the Brahmins associated with the color white, you see the Kshatriyas associated with the color red, you see the Vaishyas associated with the color yellow, and then down at the bottom you have Shudras associated with the color black, and then all the way down, it gets just blacker as you go further below. But in the oldest writing system in the history of the world was made right here in Africa. It's called Medu Neter. That's what the Greeks call hieroglyphs. Now in that language, anytime they want to express the idea of that which is complete, that which is perfect, they use the term Kim, which translates to black, and they call the nation Kemet, land of black people, and they call themselves Kemetiu, which means black people. So one, we have to even go to African language, the very first written language in the history of the world, to find out that the idea of blackness is once all the colors come together, this is when you have completion, this is when you have perfection. There's another language called Songhai. So you have Ghana, Mali, Songhai, right, as these great West African empires. And I can also go into the names. It was actually Ouagadougou was the original name of Ghana from the people of Sarakhule, Soninke people. And then you had the actual name of Mali was Nyane. Then you had Gao, which is what the Songhai language is coming from. Now, in that language, they use the word Bibi, which is the same word that they use in Akan, the language spoken in Ghana, for blackness. And they use this as an adjective that anytime they want to talk about something that is pure, anytime they want to talk about something that's powerful, anytime they want to talk about something that's fertile, they use the adjective black to describe it.
But that is history that you're giving me. What is the general perception? I'm sure kids between 20 to 30s do not know that much history.
So this is
what is the general perception?
So this
there?
is why I'm a researcher, because they have intentionally been miseducated, diseducated, and anti-educated. So if all you get is a white, miseducation, then all you can regurgitate is white miseducation, garbage in and garbage out. So once you know better, then you can do better. So again, when they want to say the water is pure, they say Hari Bibi, which means pure water. When they want to say that the sun is at its highest point, they say Wane Bibi, which is the strong black sun, literally. When they want to say the soil is fertile, they'll say Sadiza Bibi. So anything that is powerful, that's pure. Now imagine if they grew up learning this, then their general perception wouldn't be one of miseducation, diseducation, and anti-education. They're praying every Sunday to an imaginary white boy on a stick. What does that do to them psychologically? In 1939, you had this Clark doll test where they had a white doll and a black doll, and the children, anytime they say which one is a pretty doll, the black children are saying, oh, the white doll is a pretty doll. Which doll is the smart doll? Oh, the white doll. Which doll is the good doll? The white doll. They say, which doll is the bad doll? They point to the black one. Which doll is the stupid doll? They point to the black. Then eventually they ask them which one looks like you, and they have to pause because they want to identify with the white doll, but they realize, oh, I have to identify with this. I must be bad. So now when you see their behaviors in life, they've already associated who I am with that which is bad, which is inferior, which is stupid, so forth and so on. But the examples I was giving you was to show you that that one was not always the case, and then two, that that's something that is intentionally inculcated into the minds of children. And you can also find, like if you read Marco Polo, he talks about India, and he says here all of the gods are black and all the devils are white, and he's just like, his mind is blown by that. And the indigenous people, you'll find that some of the blackest people on the face of the planet Earth, you can find them in India, right? So this gives you what was going on before you had these Sanskrit, writing Indo-Aryans. This is what Gandhi, that's the term Gandhi used, right? He said, yes, my Indo-Aryan brethren talking to the British, right? So once you know what it was originally, the oldest depictions of Buddha are as black, and he has hair like mine, but he has it in these little rows like this. These are the oldest depictions that you find. And all of this was, unearthed by Runoko Rashidi. So again, once we know better, we can do better. But the first thing we have to know is that the way things are now, one, is not universal, and then two, is not how things have always been. So our role as African people, as researchers, is to restore Ma'at, truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, order. That's the oldest concept of justice in the entire planet Earth, and it comes from Africa. Imagine how we would behave if we knew that we invented that concept of justice.
So last question from my side.
No problem.
Before I move to
Yes.
students. So there is also another petition which is now against Gandhi must fall. What is your take on that? Because there are two sections then having completely polarized views. So.
Yeah, that movement was a non-starter from the beginning. Their first signatory on their petition, and most people don't even know that it exists. Their first signatory, it said Mahatma Gandhi was their first signatory. I said, these people, one, have no scruples, and again, must not be all that intelligent if you're going to say a dead man is your first signatory on your petition. I actually found out something about the mental state of some of the people who were part of that. But one is that you saw, right now we have over 2,000 signatures, and there's, I think it was somewhere around 200 signatures, including ghost signatures.
So we had 2,000 signatures in the
So Gandhi Must Fall had over 2,000.
Not 1,400 then.
That was within the first 2 weeks. We got
Okay.
1,400 in the first 2 weeks. You can actually go to change.org and see what the number is now. It's now well over 2,000. The Malawi is somewhere over 3,000 to 4,000 now. But theirs even came, they said that they came to even know about the issue by following our petition. I'm sure it would be in the thousands if the government didn't say, we'll take it away, we'll take it away. But anyway, to come back to the issue at hand. So yeah, as a matter of fact, there was a little bit of strategy going on there, because what they tried to do is that Gandhi Must Fall was such a worldwide movement. Everyone in the world, BBC, Al Jazeera, everyone, you know, in India was following this story, and they had absolutely no press. So they kind of tried to, you know, piggyback on us to get a little bit of press, but it was an absolute non-starter, because once black people are sensitized to the issues, it's very hard to convince them to be anti-black sellouts, to be quislings, to be traitors to their own people. And that's essentially what they were attempting to get people to do, is to go along with a lie because it's been firmly entrenched. And you know, once people get the truth, if I put some clean water beside some dirty water, even a child knows, all right, I want this one, I want the clean water. So it was very difficult for them to garner support beyond the ghost signatures that they wrote themselves.
This was also university students or professors?
No, it was a colleague who doesn't get along with the director, Prof. Adamako Ampofo. So she was one of the main people behind the petition Gandhi Must Fall. And this person who was the orchestrator behind the Gandhi Must Stand non-starter movement was someone who just didn't get along with her and decided, I guess, let me just throw a wrench in the thing, right? But it was interesting because this man, and I can tell you his name, but he gave an interview on Radio Universe, which is the university radio station, and one of his old students called and said, I'm so disappointed in you. I actually wanted to get a recording. I was like, if I could get this recording, this would be like go. He was like, you were the one who taught me about Pan-Africanism, and I'm so disappointed in you. And the host was like, you shouldn't say it like that. You shouldn't say it. He said, okay, I'll say it a different way. But I'm just so disappointed in you. And I was like, this has to be the ultimate. I don't even know if my students, these are my students, if they came to me and said, you were showing us to have dignity as African people, as black people, and those are synonyms. In all these African languages, the word African and black is the same word. In Chi is Obibini, in Yoruba is Adulawo, in Kikongo is Bandombe, in Kemet, ancient Kemet, it was Kemeti or Kemetiu for plural. In Bambara is Farafin. In Wolof is Nitkunyu. Anytime you have the word for African, it means black. The word for black, it means African, all one and the same. But imagine if I was inculcating to have some self-respect, but then because the Indian government has said we'll give you 200 million to build a parliament building, I just bend over and allow evil to get an opening. You understand? What type, do we have prostitutions or politicians? Prostitutions meaning an odd mixture between prostitute and politicians, meaning that I can just buy you off. And not too long after this whole Gandhi statue, I saw President Akufo-Addo holding a check for $1 million, standing there with the president of India. No, it was a representative from the Indian High Commission. So they had given him a check, and he's just smiling. And I'm like, wow. Do we have absolutely no self-respect as African people? And the answer is, that's correct. We have no self-respect, but that is the end result of an intentional process of miseducation, diseducation, and anti-education. Yes?
Okay,
I will talk to the students.
only my final question. You know that anyway Gandhi was killed in 1948. After that, many years, decades has been over. Now you know that in India, what is the biggest issue, sir? You know that Dalits and blacks are almost equal. There were some special rights there had been some special rights for Dalits. It's basically originated from the days of Gandhi, International Congress through Nehru, Indira Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi, it has been followed. Now what happened that recently, 2 years ago, that some of the special rights has been abandoned by the Supreme Court with the help of the present Narendra Modi government.
Yes.
This is the first thing.
Yes.
Second thing is that now central government, just last month central government has taken decision to give reservation for the upper class people. This is the first time also happened in India. So
you have to understand the BJP.
Yeah, BJP, you know the BJP, but yes, no. I am deadly against the BJP. I am against this RSS. I am also against this Gandhism. I am basically a communist. But at the same time, I felt that what is the single biggest challenge? That is BJP. They are curtailing all the special rights, all everything of these Dalits. They are now making reservation for the upper class people.
Of course.
But the thing is that at present day, Gandhi, for me, that you have a different perception. in my perception, Gandhi is not at all an issue. Issue is Modi. At the same time, why instead of speaking against this Modi, RSS, Hindutva, why are you concentrating on Gandhi? That is
So you need to read our book chapter, because we wrote 2 book chapters and both of them they link the Gandhi issue with the Modi issue, right? So we call Gandhi diplomacy is the face of Modi diplomacy. So this is what I was alluding to before, and let me come back here. This is what I was alluding to before. So because Gandhi was just like Modi, so having a facade of peace while actually being a warmonger, this is the exact same thing with Modi, and this is the reason why Modi is the one who's pushing Gandhi so hard, because what he needs to do is have this facade of soft power while actually pursuing the interests of upper caste Hindus against black people throughout the world. And this is exactly what we see. So it's not, again, the way you're phrasing things is in terms of diametric opposites of this or that, and that's not the case. These are intimately related issues. So if you don't see the connection between Gandhi diplomacy and Modi diplomacy, if you don't see that he's talking about peace and showing these Gandhi statues, meanwhile he is warmongering and he's getting all of these arms more than dwarfing the United States. You understand? This is what he's doing. So this is an intimate connection. Gandhi was fighting for upper caste Hindus, and what is he doing? He's fighting for upper caste Hindus. This is a continuation of what Gandhi was doing. So you had someone like Ambedkar who's talking about let's annihilate caste altogether. Gandhi is fighting tooth and nail to make sure that caste stays, because to eradicate caste is to eradicate Hinduism. He doesn't want the eradication of caste or Hinduism, Gandhi, any more than Modi does. These are intimately related issues, and you need to understand that it's not either this or that, and we make this connection. So I'll give you the book Roads Must Fall, and in our chapter the whole second section is dealing with what is Modi doing, the current geopolitics behind the push of India fighting against China in a proxy war, because everyone knows this: whosoever controls Africa controls the world. And unfortunately, it's not African people who are controlling Africa. So China is in here trying to get the plutonium and the gold and everything else. They're trying to get a gold-backed yuan. So they're here in Africa destroying the water bodies. They don't care about us as black people. They're destroying the water to get the gold so that eventually they can have their gold-backed yuan at our expense and at the expense of our children who are yet to come. So here you have China who's here in Africa, and then you have India who's here in Africa. All of them are fighting for their own interests against black people. So these are connected.
One more thing I just want to add, because in my place, I am basically from Trivandrum, it's Kerala, southern part of Kerala. There is a very famous temple, Sri Padmanabha Swami temple. You know that around up to 30s, 1930s, Dalits are not at all permitted to enter there. Suppose some Dalits are entering there, then these, you know, that RSS people, that's Modi's inheritance, that's Modi's forefathers. They are resisting, they are beating these Dalits. But one day, Mahatma Gandhi came, he led a march with these Dalit people. With him, Dalits entered that temple. At the same time, these RSS people, they beat that Dalits. So the fight between in one hand RSS, on the other hand Gandhi-led people. So what my perception is that at any cost, okay, this is a different school of thought, but what is my perception is that we couldn't at any sense equate Modi and Gandhi.
So
that is a wrong perception. I felt that.
So
that is a counterproductive also.
I understand.
That is a counterproductive also.
So let me help you. Untouchability, apartheid, integration. This is what the article we're dealing with is. And the face of each one, so integration, the face of that is Martin Luther King. This is the United States. South Africa, apartheid, anti-apartheid, the face of that is Nelson Mandela. India, you know, fighting against untouchability, not fighting against caste, fighting against untouchability, the face of that is Gandhi. Now, in all three cases, what we have is an intentional misdiagnosis of the problem. And once you misdiagnose the problem, then the solutions that you will prefer will always be solutions that are never solutions. So if you look, for example, at the UN Declaration of Genocide, what genocide is defined as, part 1 is killing members of the group. Part 2 is causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. Part 3 is bringing about conditions to destroy the group in whole or in part. Part 4 is preventing births within the group. And then Part 5 is forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. This is a 5-part definition of genocide according to the UN. So African people, black people in the United States were subjected to genocide. And there was actually a petition by William Patterson presented to the UN saying we charge genocide because all 5 of those criteria were met in the United States of black people being killed, conditions, forcibly transferring the school to prison pipeline, all of these things, we meet those conditions. In South Africa, we also met those conditions, all 5 according to genocide. The black people there in India meet those conditions. And the link also, when you look right now, you have African students and others who are living in India who are beaten every day, right? So Olivier out of the Congo who is beaten to death in broad daylight because they treat the new black people who are coming there the same way they treat the old black people who are there, will beat you, will burn you, will lynch you, will rip you apart, dismember you, so forth and so on. But let's continue. Now let's look at India. So the black people there are subjected to all 5 of the conditions of genocide. However, in the US, we're taught that the issue isn't genocide, the issue is that you're not integrated with white people, right? So if that's the problem, then the solution now becomes just get closer to the ones who are committing genocide. That's inappropriate behavior. If you have a knife and you're trying to stab me, the solution isn't let me come closer to you so you can stab me more. You understand? That can never be the solution to genocide. Same thing in South Africa. They tell us the problem is apartheid. You are apart from these genocidal maniacs. So the solution now just becomes anti-apartheid. Just get closer to the ones who are committing genocide. But that's never a solution. And then the same thing in India. In the face of anti-untouchability is guess who? Gandhi. So he's not annihilating caste. He's not annihilating the upper caste Hindus. All he's doing is saying, guess what? Now you can come closer to us. You can touch this. You can take a drink from here. You can walk into a temple. But you're not doing anything to stop the genocide. And if you look at pogrom after pogrom after pogrom, you understand, of the upper caste Hindus against not only the black people, but Muslims, anyone who's not in this upper caste Hindu fold, you understand? So again, you can never solve the problem of genocide by getting closer to the one who is perpetrating and perpetuating that genocide. But this is what Gandhi is doing. This is what Nelson Mandela is doing. And this is the reason why we have them forced down our throats as black people. These are the heroes that we get. Growing up, who are we to look up to? They tell us to look up to Martin Luther King. We're supposed to look up to Nelson Mandela. We're supposed to look up to Gandhi as black people. But what happens when we choose our own heroes? I may choose someone like Nana Marcus Garvey. I may choose someone like Nana Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Those who were fighting tooth and nail for black people. And these are names that most people don't even know who they are. But those are the ones who I would choose. I may choose someone like a Nana Malcolm X. But that's not who we have shoved down our throats. We have Martin Luther King. Why? Because he's useful, because he is misdiagnosing the problem and sending us off on a diversion, a dummy mission to solve a problem that's never the problem. We get Nelson Mandela. We may choose Mangaliso Sobukwe. Most people don't even know who Sobukwe is. You understand? I'm not saying, I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
But most people in South Africa themselves is like, who is that? The millennials, the born free generation, Sobukwe. What's a Sobukwe? You understand? But everybody knows who Mandela is because our enemies have chosen our heroes for us. People don't know Gangu, right? This Dalit leader in the 1800s who fought tooth and nail. Much less do they know about Ambedkar, much less do they know about any of these great leaders. But all of them will know about Gandhi. Guess what? Why? Because he serves the interest of giving us a hero who's never a hero, someone who will misdiagnose our problems so that we can never solve the problems. If I have a bullet wound and then you're diagnosing me for a fever, and you give me some fever medicine, meanwhile I'm bleeding out, meanwhile my throat is slit and now I'm bleeding out from my throat, you say, don't worry, I have the solution for you. Here's a Band-Aid, I'll put it on your ear. Is that going to solve my problem? So we have to tackle the problem of genocide, of these white genocidal maniacs who are killing black people and have been doing this for thousands of years.
One more question. Is it true that the scholarship for the Ghanaian students has been stopped?
No. That's a satire.
That's
That's a satire. So when you go to the news story and scroll down, it says this whole site is satire. It says rated S for satire.
Okay.
So that's a fake news story. And people have asked me about that. it's a fake news story. So there was none.
So there have been no repercussions from the Indian side as of now, so far.
Nothing that's been reported in
This
anything legitimate.
scholarship is still going on.
Continuing.
So this whole thing about canceling 2,000 scholarships was just a fake news.
Okay.
It's absolutely fake news. And again, go to the website and then scroll all. Apparently, people don't scroll down to the entire
No, I
page.
haven't read any website. I was told this by a local journalist.
Yes,
So
yes,
he said
yes,
that there's
and
a news that was circulating,
Right.
but we have not been able
Yes.
to.
And you can't
authenticate
verify it
so-
because it was a pure satire. When you go to the one website that reported on it, and then others started to pick it up from this fraudulent website, but it's like a joke site,
It went
right?
viral.
It's like the Onion or anything like that.
Okay. Could I get your name, please?
Yeah, sorry.
Can you just write it so that I don't spell it wrong?
And I think you have some questions for the students.
Yes, I do.
Yes. Okay.
No, fuck anyhow.
Oh, maka kekre.
26.
And what are you doing?
I'm a graduate assistant.
Graduate assistant
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Institute of. So is it only your students or they were? I mean.
No,
were-
these are the ones I got the notice this morning, so
Okay,
I just
yeah, I know it was-
he came by my office. I said, "Hey, can you?"
Okay.
So yeah, the ones who.
So if both of you can tell me your personal reasons of why you decided to join the petition, how much you knew before his statue was erected that you know who Gandhi is, and how did it change for you?
Well, for me, I think I'm a student of African history and politics.
Hmm?
Right? I'm a student of African history and politics, so I mean, it couldn't have been no better. There was no better means for me to associate myself with the whole agenda because I read about African history. I'm into African history and politics, so I was very much aware of the double standard of Gandhi. I mean, you can't compartmentalize your life in such a way that in one breath you project the life of a so-called Mahatma, right? And at the same time, you fight for the liberation of another group of people in your country. And I knew of the racist code. I had read The Daughter in the Scene by Undati Roy. I had read G.B. Singh, Unveiling the Mask of Divinity, The Stretcher Bearer of Empire. So eventually I know that Gandhi was living a double standard life, right? And in my own small way, as is my lecturer, and as I teach the student, I try to elucidate on the double standard of Gandhi. So I took it from learning from him, reading other books, and then teaching my own class, letting people know where.
So you're doing a PhD in.
Yes.
So you're a student here or a?
Yeah, I'm a student here.
You're a student?
PhD on political science.
Yeah. So
Ghanaian diaspora in South Africa.
yeah, that's what I work on. That's what I work on. But I knew, and I mean, I think the issue of Gandhi even goes beyond the things you are reading, right? Because he was a morally corrupt man, in my opinion, right? This whole agenda of experimenting with new ladies and sleeping with them, I mean, sleeping to prove that kind of moral life. And you see, the double standard of Gandhi is that.
You're talking about the vow of celibacy?
Yes, the vow of celibacy. The point is that at the same time, and that is what I get from Aaron Datiro, and Datiro tells you that at the same time that Gandhi was putting on that life of humility and modesty, he had already aroused and arrogated to himself so much power. So there was no need to pretend to be like he was that humble and morally upright because he had all the power that he needed. And this was the same power he was going to use to, suppress the Dalit in India. So I'm sure these are the kind of things and so many things that we are learning that, it wasn't right because we don't even have statues of our own heroes on campus.
Why?
So why then do you have to erect somebody? Somebody who had demonstrated in all aspects of his life that he didn't like black people. So there was no better time for people like us to jump onto the campaign than this avenue afforded us.
So you're a local of Accra or?
Yeah, I'm in Accra. I'm in
Born and
Accra.
brought
Yeah.
And tell me about you. How?
Okay.
Would you please write your name?
You can read about Modi here in connection to Modi.
Yeah. So, how did you join the protest?
I would say it goes all down to knowing. As they say, know thyself. The most powerful statement. because I was reading Rhonda Bryan's book, The Secret, and it had quotes of Mahatma Gandhi. So I was like, yeah, this is a good man because of the quotes. So I came to campus, I saw his statue over there, and people were not going to see it. And I was like, these people, don't they know this man? So some days later, I came to meet Dr. Badele, and I went back to my room. I told my roommates, this is the man like I need in my life, because I was reading about Africa, and the first day we met, he told me a lot about Africa. So I came back to his office and I saw the petition. So I was like, oh, this man that I used to love, even though I didn't know much about this, my godfather is saying his statue should be removed. So I went back to the room and started reading about Gandhi. So then I found this book, Desai and this South African.
Desai and Vahed.
Yeah, Desai and Vahed. Yeah, this book, the South African Gandhi. Stretcher, bearer of empire. Then you realize even when there was a breakout of a disease, and in the hospital, Gandhi could tell them that unless they take away the Kafirs, the blacks people from there, that disease is not going out. So I was like, no, this man that I thought was good, the real him is not good for us. So it all goes down to know thyself. So when you know yourself, when the people who allowed the statue to be mounted here knew who Gandhi was, I'm sure they wouldn't have even allowed it to pass through the entrance. So after people getting to know and they signed the petition, from what my lecturer is saying, I'm sure if people get to listen to what he has said today, the whole of Ghana, I can assure you, over 90% will vote that or sign the petition that we take the statue out. Yeah, so knowledge says it all. Know thyself is the statement.
Could I get your age?
33.
33. And you are a BSc student in statistics.
Yeah.
I think what I can also add is the knowledge is very powerful, right? Because what we've been told about Gandhi is what Chimamanda calls the danger of a single story. So there's only one dimension of Gandhi that people have read through their lives, and very few people have. I think it's a privilege for you to know Gandhi's double standard, and it's very, very sad for people that only know one aspect, of Gandhi's life. Because I think as a good scholar, you shouldn't only bow down to the literature that is available to you. That is why scholars must be researchers. You have to go to the very point of doing basic research to know the truth. So it is very sad that people will say Gandhi was a political strategist. He was a political theorist, the political scientist. You can't be a good political scientist without being a historian, right? So if you only say that Gandhi was a political theorist and a political strategist, what did he do? What even had he done after he had claimed to be a Mahatma? You get it? And that is how you know that Gandhi had clearly double standard. So that argument of how he came to repent much later, he repented for who and for what cause? Because at the same time he was chanting Satyagraha. He was suppressing Dalit in so many avenues you could think of, as against what Dr. Ambedkar was trying to fight for the Dalit. So I think it is good as Richard said, and that is the reason why most people jump on it, because eventually the truth was out there for people to read. When Dr. Kambon was sending the information outside, he also added site to which you can find the collected work of Gandhi that he himself had written and said about black people. So it was very obvious that people had access to the knowledge, and that is why they came to rethink or conceive of how they see or they saw Gandhi.
Okay.
How did you? What? I'm just curious. How did you all take interest in India? I mean, not just Gandhi, but you also seem to know a lot about India. So, any specific particular reason? Because this is Institute of African Studies. So,
you see, I think if you are reading African studies, you should be very knowledgeable, because Africa is situated within world politics. So if you can't study Africa without studying, and especially when you have black people in India, right? African diaspora means that you are concerned with Africans outside the continent. So there is that kind of solidarity of black people. So if there are black people in South Africa, India, US, Asia, as long as you're a student of Africa, your concern shouldn't be about Africans on the continent, but it should move beyond the continent. What is happening to my people in India? What is happening to my people in the US? What is happening to my people in Asia? So that's kind of solidarity. So every good student of African history and politics must know that Africans are also elsewhere. And for you to learn Indian history is to learn about black people, because you know that there are several ways by which the African diaspora has been created. We have what you call the Asian voluntary migration. Slavery is not the history of Africa. Slavery interrupted the history of Africa. So there are other ways that the African diaspora has been created, not necessarily through slavery. So there are so many ways, there are so many places you can find African diaspora. So a student of African studies, in the history of African studies, we don't only know about Africa, but we know about other places because they have African descent also in those places.
So do students have a general perception of fear when they go to study in India? I mean, you mentioned about one case where a student was assaulted. So even in India, when Indians are going out to say Australia or USA, there have been incidents of violence. So is there a general perception of fear when students from Africa go to India to study? Or
no, I think there, in my opinion, I think there is. Right? I mean, I was even going to ask a question. I was going to ask you how the Indian government was retaliating, was responding to, removing Gandhi statue. How the Indian government made any statement.
It wasn't, I think,
It wasn't,
widely
it's not
criticized
a-
in Indian media. So
Indian media, but it is not that kind of an emotional issue because it is not a political issue in India. That is the basic reason.
I think if there would
This
have
is not a
been-
political issue in India because elections are coming. So suppose something is happening in Pakistan, then it should be a huge issue in India because it's really reflecting.
It was
political
definitely a news piece, but it did not,
Attract
let me
that
say, it
attention.
did
It
not
didn't
come
have
in
any-
prime
it
time or
didn't
did not
have
take
any-
front pages.
And
So-
another issue is that you told that some Africans are beaten up. At the same time, in my own place, so many African youth are playing in football clubs. Not big clubs. In small, every village, every district, there are so many clubs. During the time of the season is basically in the summer season, March, February, March, April, May. That all are the football season. At that time, lot of players are coming. Young players like you are coming, and they are playing football. They are the great heroes. So I don't think that in our part of India, there is not even a single incident of beaten up any of the Africans.
And what part of India?
South,
South,
southern
I am the
part.
extremely south, and I
Okay.
think that is one or two isolated incidents.
Yeah.
And more Muslims
there
are-
is there is discrimination against
There is a discrimination.
Africans
At the
in
same
Mumbai
time-
and Delhi.
But where specifically in the South? Because as a researcher, I just want to, of course, follow up and find out what incidents occur. What city or where exactly?
Myself.
Yeah.
So he
Kerala,
is from
Kerala.
southern
Kerala,
part of-
okay, okay.
Yeah, and I am based in Mumbai. So
Mumbai,
we
okay.
do have a huge African population, especially in the suburban area of Mumbai where there is Nalasopara. So the general perception that I'll tell you is that they are mostly dealing in drugs.
Mm.
So that's a
That
very
kind of
general
issue.
perception which is there. So a lot of Africans are routinely picked up by local police because of their involvement in drug peddling. So.
And I think is that very myopic perception of Africa, right? There are some group of Africans that are doing that. It hasn't got to be, it hasn't got to involve the idea that once this group of Africans are doing that means every African that comes to India is put in that particular bracket as dealing in drugs.
Why do Africans want to travel to India to study? I mean, what makes Africans travel to India?
Well,
A lot of them have also decided to reside there. Like I know so many in Mumbai. So
I've seen different news stories where African students are talking about, they went there looking for different opportunities, and most of the stories I follow have been protests against the violence. So you have all these students who are there studying in India, and meanwhile a mob comes up and attacks them. This one I've seen live videos of a mob coming into a bar, just beating all the Africans who are there. Different reports. So you have Africans who have had these protests. They have these placards, stop, treating us this way. I was looking at a BBC documentary where a young man was saying, I came here looking for opportunities, and Africans travel. So there are Africans in China, there are Africans in places I would never dream of going.
China.
yeah,
In Guangzhou, so I run the documentary film series here. We had a documentary, Guangzhou Dream Factory, where it dealt with all of these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Africans who are there, some who have, married there. We looked at another one, the African who wanted to fly, who was a guy who I was looking at Kung Fu flicks, decided to go to China. So Africans are everywhere in the entire world.
So tell me, if there's a student in Ghana who does get a scholarship to study in India, would the parents be skeptical about sending their children?
It depends on how much the parents know. You understand? Because if they get
In
a
a
chance,
city like Accra, say for
Yeah.
example, not rural, not Tamale or
yeah.
northern stretches,
Oh no,
but
so people in Accra are not necessarily going to be well informed about black people being beaten and killed in broad daylight. So again, it really depends on how much do those parents know. If they've seen, I remember back in 2016, there was a documentary where they followed a young African guy who was talking about how racist India was, and they took him to the CD community. And he was like, wow, I'm amazed. He saw them dancing and drumming. He's like, wow, my people, you understand? He said, this is the first time I felt like home, here in India. So, and that was like a BBC short documentary. So again, if you have parents who may be informed, who may be in the news, and I would think that once your child is saying they want to go to that place, that they should try to do maybe a search or two, ask people who are already there. And what I generally find is that Africans go to places where Africans already are. So like there are places in the US where New York is like little Senegal. So there's the first Senegalese who got there said, everybody come on. And now everyone is there. North Carolina is little Congo. Washington, D.C. is little Ethiopia. So they're enclaves. So the first person who comes there now invites all these other people to come and says, look, there are opportunities. Let's do some things. And oftentimes they're going there looking for opportunities, but they don't necessarily want to stay. They want to broaden their horizons, and then they want to, come back. That was the case in China, so forth and so on. So again, it's hard to generalize. The knowledge level of that person would determine how much they would be fearful or just optimistic. Maybe things will, go there. But I think this is really to come back to the soft power of India. They're showing you these images, Kumkum Bhaja, the whitest of all white
really
Indians.
Popular over
It is
here?
huge.
Because we had some Ghanaian footballers who came and we did a story on them, and they said that they watch this daily soap every day. I don't watch it, so I was surprised that
This is in Ghana.
I think you've not heard
No,
about
I
it.
didn't
These
hear
are
it.
even-
Even you're from India.
You
You're
don't
not
watch it.
in
No, I
Ghana.
didn't
watch it.
In Ghana, I will leave one building where it's playing. I'll walk into the next building and it's playing. I'll walk into another reception and it's playing, and everyone's eyes are glued to this.
Why?
Because they look like white people, and here you have a population of people who've been taught to worship white people. This imaginary white boy on a stick, who they call Jesus, this has now had an impact on all their perceptions. So the Indians that you see are not the Indians from deep south of India, some of the darker, people. It's not Siddhis, it's not Adivasis. It's these upper caste Brahmin Hindus by and large who are represented there. So they see white people, they're just like, oh, this is who I've been worshiping.
Watch it once to get the.
Yeah, so maybe a little whiteness will rub off. If you go around, you'll see that they sell Indian hair. You have to watch for being mugged, not because they want your money. They will try to shave your hair and then get some glue and put it on there. Because this is what happens. They've been taught self-hatred. The self-hatred industry is one of the most lucrative industries in Africa because we're taught to hate the texture of our hair, the color of our skin, the broadness of our nose, the thickness of our lips, everything, and that is intentional. It's not just magically we just decide to start hating ourselves. Again, I was giving you the historical perspective that the idea is black is what is perfect, what is pure, you understand? But you have an intentional miseducation, diseducation, and anti-education that now makes us anti-black. So most black people are anti-black.
Yes.
Not naturally, most Africans are anti-African. So now when they see someone who looks like this person who they've been worshiping, because the main vector of infection is through this white Jesus, so now they'll see someone who looks like this white person, they will look at it every day. Here in Ghana, Kumkum Bhaja, just say the word, and people,
So did we have protest rallies for this, for removing the statue? Were there any rallies or marches which took place, or was it just an online petition? And
It was more diffused. And I think the main thing that prevented the rallies was the government saying we'll take down the statue.
so there were no
Because-
rallies.
Yeah.
And we even were going to organize one, and we had a discussion between the core of Gandhi Must Fall. So we had colleagues who were based in California, and they had this rally there against the Gandhi statue there in California.
Yeah, there was one which was.
Right, in Cerritos, California. And they were saying let's have a coordinated rally protest where on Gandhi's birthday we should have a rally there, a rally here, rally in South Africa. But some colleagues were like, we don't want to even recognize his birthday whatsoever. We can choose our own date. We can do a rally just on a different date. But again, it was an intentional and calculated move for the government to say, we'll just take down the statue. Because at that point, people were congratulating us, saying, good job, the statue's gone. We say, it's not gone, please don't go away. And they're going away because they think it's been done. So that was a strategic move to defeat your enemy by giving into their demands. So, it was more, it ended up being more diffused, more social media, more online, more hashtags, and more sending information back and forth than anything else.
I forgot to ask your age.
My age, I'm 13.
The real one.
The real one or the fake one? The real one is 39 years.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll turn 40 later on.
You're
this year.
basically from here, Accra.
I was born and raised in the United States.
Oh, United
Right.
States.
And then I naturalized as a
Where,
citizen.
where? In this
I was born in Brooklyn and raised in North Carolina.
North Carolina.
Right? Born in Brooklyn, New York, raised in North Carolina.
Could you share numbers or contacts of the protesters in Malawi?
Yeah.